Okay, so welcome everyone to Practical Week number 14. Okay, this week is going to be about front-end testing as mentioned in here primarily. Okay, but if we have some time left towards the end, maybe we can attempt a bit of a backend test as well, which would be quite simple and won't require any kind of special framework, okay, for that, such as Jest, which we need in order to perform the front-end test. Okay, so having said that, let's start with it. Okay, go to basically this website with the Practical Week 14, where you would find all of the instructions. Okay, so start by cloning the repository. It'll give you a repository which contains a front end as well as a backend. Okay, and here you see the instructions for running the backend, okay, which were skipped, I guess, from this page. So make sure that you follow all of these instructions for the front end, and make sure that you run these commands for starting the backend as well, so that the whole application works properly. Okay, so for the front end, yeah, what you'll have to do is basically cd into the directory with the front end. So here we'll have basically two npm projects, one for the front end and another one for the back end. Each of these projects, they have a package JSON, okay? So you'll need to install, run npm install for both of them. Okay, so first you can start with the front end, cd into it, run npm install, and additionally run npm install with the following dependencies. Okay, Jest, Babel, and whatever test utils for Vue.js. So after you've done this, make sure you do follow the instructions for the backend. Okay, so cd into the backend respectively, which is skipped in here. Run npm install. And there is additionally a command npm run db init to initialize the sort of embedded SQLite database for the backend. And then run npm start to start the backend. And after you've run this, basically you can go ahead and run npm run serve in the front end and run the front end. The front end will connect to the backend, and everything, if everything works well, basically you need to see something like that. If you go to your local host 8080 in the browser, basically you'll see a sort of a small to-do app. Okay, we can select users and see their to-do tasks. So if everything went successfully, you should be able to see at least the first user here with about 5 tasks. And the other users will have sort of empty tasks. Let me open the chat. Okay, so no questions. Then, yeah, whenever you reach basically this point where you see the application working in the browser, okay, and you see the first user with 5 tasks, maybe you can drop a message in Zoom chat so that I can see a couple of confirmations, and then we can move on with the next tasks. At least I can move on, okay? If you finish, you can move on your own and even finish the whole practical on your own. But basically, I want to keep up with everyone, so that's why a couple of confirmations would be useful. Well, there's like 27 of you. Let's get like, I don't know, 10 confirmations and then we can move on. Right, we got 6. Yeah, make sure you don't forget, like you run command by command. Okay, so for the front end, cd front end, npm install, npm install all of these dependencies. Don't miss out on any of these dependencies. And to run the front end, it's npm run serve. For the backend, cd into the backend, npm install, npm run db init, and npm start to start the backend. Okay. Make sure you don't forget any of these commands. We got 7 so far. Let's get like 3 more confirmations and move on. Okay, those of you who got it working, you can proceed on your own. It's pretty straightforward, I think. Okay, nice. Okay, we've passed. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's move to task number 3, which is to start already setting up for defining our tests. So please go ahead and create this just.config.js into the root of the frontend folder, and just basically paste all of this content into the just.config.js. The sort of the most important parts of the just config would be, I believe, the test match attribute. Basically, it defines the location where we would place our test files. Okay, and basically how our test files would be named. In our case, the tests that we would define are going to be located under the tests folder inside of the unit within tests, and then the the files themselves are going to be called, let's say, the component that we're testing, .spec.js, which we see in here. Okay, this is the folder, and this is a sort of a naming mask for the name of the file. So it's star, meaning anything, .spec, something like either JS or JSX or TS for TypeScript or TSX, stuff like that. Okay, so in my case, I think I've added it already. So under the root of my frontend folder, I added this jest.config.js and just pasted everything from there. Simple as that. I don't think we need a confirmation for this. So once you have that, go ahead in the package.json and in the scripts section add another script called test. And this will enable us to run npm run test. And what the test script will run is basically it will run our jest library which we imported, and the jest is going to make use of the jest config, just because of we defined in the config where our tests are defined, where they are located, and how they're named. So when we run jest, it takes into consideration the config and runs the tests which are located under tests unit and all of those spec.js tests, which are we going to be defining, okay, in a second. So adding the test script should be pretty easy as well. So once you're done with that, go ahead and create the tests directory with the unit directory inside of it, and create a file called header.spec.js, which is going to be our simple test, just to confirm that we are able to run the tests. And basically copy and paste the contents of this test. So just to show you what I have defined in my case, so just config in the root of the frontend. In the package JSON, I have a script test, okay, which goes below the lint in the scripts. And I've created a folder tests with a unit folder within the tests folder, and then with a header spec.js file within the unit folder. Okay, and just copied and pasted the contents of the header spec.js. Should be pretty straightforward up until this point. Okay, so basically what this simple test does, it uses the mount function from the view test utils to sort of initialize our header component and render it sort of virtually without you seeing it on the screen, okay? And then what we want to assert in this test is whether the template that was rendered, it contains a date. Yes. Does it work? It should work. Yep, to run the front end, it's npm run serve. Within the front end directory, in my case, because I'm using Yarn, I'm doing yarn serve. You cannot add the tasks, but do you see at least 5 tasks? If you see these 5 tasks, basically the database connection and the backend connection is running, is working correctly. Interesting. Okay. Would be weird if you see just 1 task. Because it's either working and you see 5, or it's not working and you don't see any task, okay? So what I've noticed is in the previous lab, people also complained that they don't see the tasks, but it's because they forgot to run some command on the backend, okay? So please make sure that on the backend side, you've ran all of the commands. So for the backend, again, you have to do cd into the backend to enter into the backend folder via the terminal, and then run npm install again. So you have to run npm install twice, once for the front end and once for the backend. And then for the backend, make sure that you run npm run db init, which is the command which is defined in here in the package JSON of the backend. Okay, so now I'm in my code editor. Okay, so here's the backend package JSON, and there is this db init script, okay, which runs basically, it does node run this init.js file, and in the init.js file, what it does is basically connects to our local SQLite embedded database and creates the table of tasks and inserts some tasks. So make sure you don't skip this command, the db init, which initializes the database and inserts the tasks inside of the database. And then what you have to do is basically start the backend. So you'll have to start the backend and keep it running. Okay, don't close it. So I have here in my IDE basically 2 terminals that are running in parallel. One of them is running the backend, and another one is running the front end. Okay, so you want to make sure you have 2 processes, okay, running in parallel. One is the backend and another one is the front end. Yep. Okay, so I hope this would help. Okay. Okay, so let's continue. So what the test is about, okay, basically we're sort of virtually rendering the header component in here. And we want to assert that because if we take a look in the code in our header component, if I find it in the source components header, okay, so it's supposed to render a date. Okay, it's actually a day, okay, that we're asserting in there via this function. This is what we expect from this component for it to render. And in this test, we're basically asserting, we're checking whether what was rendered is indeed the correct date, okay? So we sort of hard code a date, and then we check that whether the wrapper, the HTML, okay, template of the rendered component of the header contains the date that we expect the template to contain, okay? And basically we're using these it and expect functions which we get from the libraries that we've imported, okay, for testing, okay. And then when we want to check something, we also use special functions such as to contain, okay, to do these assertions. I hope all of these was mentioned in the lecture on Monday, because you would need these in the following tasks, okay? I checked these slides, and in the slides you don't quite have examples of those functions, so I'm not really sure, but the people in the previous lab have sort of managed to solve it, so I hope that, I guess, you guys were demoed all of these functions. Okay, let me read the chat. Is the describe method a special method for testing, or it just takes all the methods in the spec.js? I think basically it just defines a test with the name header, okay? That's basically it. Basically it defines, I guess, a test suite, because all of your checks would be like different it functions, which I believe stands for, could be integration test or something like that. Not really sure if I follow. Does it have any documentation? Nope. Okay. Okay. So it basically lets just know that there are some tests defined basically under this spec.js file. Basically, without it, I mean, even it lets the IDE know that we can run this manually. I'm not really sure if this will work, but maybe we can give it a try. Okay. So it lets just know about the tests in here, and apparently IDE is also smart enough to figure out, based on this function, that there are some tests, that there is a test suite for the header component defined in the header.spec.js. Okay, so yeah, so either in the IDE, it's smart enough to run all this, or you can do npm run test and confirm that everything is running correctly, okay? And in my case, it's yarn test. Okay, so what you want to see is the number of your tests is 1 so far, so 1 total and 1 passed. Okay, this will be the success scenario. Okay, so to move on to the tasks, I guess by this point, I assume that most of you managed to get the same result, 1 passed and 1 total, after running npm run test within the frontend folder. Okay, so if you manage to do all of that, please proceed to the tasks. So for the task, we'll have to basically assert the list component. So for that, go ahead and create another file called list.spec.js to define all of these tests. And we'll have to assert that the list component properly renders list items, okay? So first of all, we want to check whether the number of list items rendered is equal to the expected number of rendered list items. Okay, so if we take a look at the list component, basically it gets the data from the backend, but in this test, actually what we would want to do is pass in some hard-coded data. So what you'll have to do is basically initialize the component, but in the mount you'll need to sort of pass in somehow the hard-coded data as with a special parameter. Okay, so let me know if you actually know how to do that. Otherwise, I can sort of give you a slight hint, okay, regarding this. So basically what we want to do is to mount the list component, pass in the properties, okay, pass in some hard-coded tasks as properties, and basically define a function that asserts that the number of tasks in our hard-coded data is equal to the number of tasks from the rendered template of the list component. So this will be the logic of the test. Okay, so I'll give you like 15 minutes to do that. Basically, it's about figuring out this first test to make it work, and if it works, basically it's about just copy and pasting um, to basically complete the other two tests. That's why I'm gonna give you like a bit more time for this. Okay, so just to unblock you a bit for those of you who are stuck, at least with the initialization, the mounting of the list component within the test. Okay, so this is my list.spec.js. And I create my sort of hard-coded array. Okay, just some um, tasks to play with. Okay, in this case, we just have to count them and later on check whether they are done or not done. And to initialize the wrapper, I'm passing my hard-coded test data directly as props data. In this case, I have a list property in the list component. So basically what you'll have to do is to assert and somehow check that the rendered list component contains the same amount of rendered tasks as the number of tasks in this hard-coded array. That will be our check. And it's quite simple, I believe just 2 lines of code, but you need to find the right functions for it, which I hope that you know. Because this just is a sort of a library, a framework, it needs, you know, some special functions, okay, in the correct order in order to perform these checks and assertions. Okay, so just to give you another hint, so if you check the list component, and we see here the v4, which is responsible for rendering all of the tasks, we see that each task has a class list item. So what you can do is basically fetch from that rendered wrapper all of the elements with the class list item, count them, and then assert, check if the number of elements with the class list item equals the number of elements in the array. Then we basically consider the test as successful. Yeah, regarding the question about the describe method, I think it just describes and adds one extra line in the terminal, okay? So if you have a describe header, I think it adds header in here. So let's try that now. I have the header, I run test, it adds header, and if I remove, let's see if I get it. Yep. So if I remove the describe, basically it doesn't output the header. I thought maybe because of the describe thing, I can isolate and execute separately the header. For example, here I have the solution, okay? So I have both the list spec.js with the tests for the list component and the header spec.js with the tests for the header. And I thought maybe if I have the describe, maybe I can isolate and sort of execute only the header and only the list when I want, but apparently if I remove the describe, I can still isolate and just execute the header tests. If I do yarn test header, yeah, it'll just run the header tests. So apparently it's just for adding some text to the terminal, I guess. Just like I don't know, for decoration or something like that, I guess. Or as the method says, as a like a description. Because yeah, if I remove it, so basically you'll be able to run npm run test and then pass as a parameter the name of the component that you want to test, depending, I guess, on the name of the spec.js file. So if you want to test in isolation the header, you do npm run test header, or in my case, yarn test header. And even without the describe, it'll work. It'll just take the one test. If I want to test my list, I'll do yarn test, or in your case, npm run test list. And it'll take the 3 tests that I have in the list. Okay, so yep. Apparently describe is just for decoration. Yep. Okay, so let's go into the solution for the list. As I mentioned, it's just 2 lines of code. Okay, so I gave you like sort of plenty of time for that. Okay, so we define it function, I guess stands for integration test, I would assume. Add a description for it, what we want to assert. Okay, that this test would check that we render the correct amount of tasks. Okay, that the amount of tasks that we pass to this component in the props is equal to the amount of tasks that are rendered by the template. Okay, so we test that whether, I guess, the front-end designer didn't make a typo or a mistake, so that magically a couple of items disappear. Okay, so as many items that as we pass, all of them basically need to be rendered. Okay, so in order to do that, as I based on the hint that I gave you, basically select all of the items that have the class list item from the rendered wrapper using the function find all. So I hoped that you're familiar with this function, which is required. Okay, in this case, we store the items in the items constant, and then as simple as that, we declare our assertion. We expect that the number of the items that we just queried, okay, with class list item, to equal the number of items in our array, okay, in our hard-coded array. So as simple as that. See if you have questions, maybe. If not, then we can move on to the task number 2. And as I said, if you've managed to accomplish task number 1, it will be very easy to do task number 2 and task number 3, almost like copy pasting. So basically you have to check now that the correct number of sort of done items are displayed, okay? So if we take a look again at the list component, the done items, they have a class done or not done in the template, and in our hard-coded data, the items that are done, they have the attribute done set to true, and the ones that are not done, they have the attribute done set to false. So basically we're checking that the number of done items in our test data that have the done attribute to true is equal to the number of done elements in our template that has the done class. Okay, so that's the logic for the second test. Can I give you like 4 minutes for that? Should be enough. Okay, maybe I can paste the solution as well so that don't have any typos. Can paste it in the Zoom chat. And since we have on Slack the group number 4, maybe I can make use of that and paste the code in Slack as well. Slack works. Okay, so lab group 4. Let me open a chat thread. Okay, so lab 14. And under lab 14, let me just paste. Gonna mark it as task number 1. So this is going to be your code for task number 1. Make sure you don't have any typos of some sort. And make sure to confirm by running again npm run test. And since you have now 2 files, okay, basically you're going to see here that you have now 2 test suites. Okay, so one test suite is basically whatever you have described in a test file. Okay, so header spec.js is one test suite, and then the second test suite is the list spec.js. So after you have one test in header and one test in list, you should be able to see here test suite 2, 2 passed, 2 total tests, 2 passed, 2 total. Okay, so let's see the second task. Basically, it's the same except it has one extra line of code. Okay, to filter the items within the test date and to find the number of those that have the attribute done set to true. Okay, so we have a filter over our test data, and this is going to return us the hard-coded items that are done. And we have the same find all function to retrieve from our rendered template the elements with the class done. And what we have to do to assert, okay, is to check whether the number of items from our template with the class done is equal to the number of done items from our hard-coded data. to the length of this done items array. So as simple as that. And I can copy and paste this as well. So basically, this is an arrow function, okay? So I could have rewritten this, taking a function that takes an item, okay, and return if basically we, okay, can I return to the if, okay, is yeah. So basically this is a sort of a shorthand way of checking if done is set to true. I think you can even in a simple if statement you can have if item done, okay. So if you write if statements like this, if item done, it means that if the done attribute in the item is set to true, then this will execute, okay. And basically this filter function, okay, whenever we return true in the condition, it adds the item to the array, okay. So it filters, it goes over the test data over each item, and whenever this is true, it adds the item to the array, okay. And whenever done is not true, then those items are not added to a new array. Okay, so it creates a new array with items that have the done attributes basically true. And this is a shorthand, okay, return item done. This is a shorthand to item done equals true. Yep. And instead of the entire function and the entire return item done is true, just pass an arrow function item. Yep, just like this. Basically a shorthand for what I've written before. Also sometimes this if statement like this, if item some attribute, and you can have some attribute and it might be something different, or item title, okay. It doesn't check if the title is true because the title is a string. It'll check whether title exists, is defined, or title doesn't exist on the object. It's for attributes that are other than booleans, okay. And if it's a boolean, I think it'll check first if done exists. If I do if item done, so it'll first check if done exists. If done won't exist, then I would get here false. But if done exists, then it checks if done is true or done is false additionally. Okay. For the other types, for if I do item title, then it will simply check if the title exists or not. That'll be true or false. Get some JavaScript hacks in there. Okay, and right, so task number 3. There are multiple ways to do that. So Yep, I think there's no really correct way, okay, to check for this. People find all sorts of ways to do it. I think in the last lab we found 4 ways to do to check whether how many not done items are displayed. I'm gonna give you like 5 minutes for this as well. Okay, so let's see the last task. Okay, so first we need to filter again our array of hard-coded data to find those tasks which are not done, and then we have to assert whether these number of tasks that are not done in our hard-coded array is equal to the tasks which are not done from the rendered wrapper. Okay, so first we do this function to filter. Maybe I can move it at the top to start with that. Then after that, we have basically two versions of the code that we can implement. There's a version 3, and even some people in the last lab have found the version 4. So I think the most straightforward is version 2, in my opinion. Okay, so we use the find all twice. Once to find all of the list items, all of the items in the list, okay? And then we find all of the items in the list that have the class done, and we subtract the number of done items from the total number of list items. So those are going to be not done. So this is what we do here, and we basically expect that to equal to the number of items which are not done from our filtered, okay, array in here. So that's, I guess, the most straightforward version. A bit more of a complex, sort of optimized version of that is to do it via just one find all statement using a bit more of a complex CSS style selector. Okay, so we select, we go over our list items and we get those that additionally don't have the done class. Okay, so it's quite a smart way to retrieve, okay, the items which are not done. Basically all of the list items, all of the items, they have the class list item, and additionally those that are done, they have the class done. And we check those that don't additionally have the class done, those are not done, and we want to find those. Okay, so this is our not done elements selected from the rendered wrapper, and then we assert if the number of our not done elements is equal to the number of not done elements from the filtered array of hard-coded data. Okay, another way to do it, but then it will involve modification of the list, is add another class, not done, for example, if the item is not done. And then you do it basically by just copy pasting this function, and you just replace done with not done. And then here in the filter, item done, you just add one exclamation sign to retrieve from the filter those that are not done. Okay, so this is the third way. And if I want to find a fourth way, maybe I can find a Zoom session. Okay, so that was 12:03, that is today. Yeah, I think this is my session. Okay, so one person basically did by wrapper find all. He used list items, okay, and then on those list items he used like a JavaScript filter to get the item as a V, and then he does basically get the items that do not contain the class done within the classes list of the retrieved elements. So also quite a creative way to do it. can just copy this. My shift has been broken lately, so I don't know if I can copy this. Okay. So that's one way. That's basically the fourth way that you can do it. Okay. So let me update that in the code. Okay. V3 basically add um, okay, I'm just gonna copy and paste all of the solution for task number 3. Okay, and I'm gonna paste it in Slack as well. Okay, so there you have it. I hope it works in your case. At the end, you can just run npm run test. Okay, just to confirm everything is working. In my case, I do yarn test. And if everything is fine, then ideally you should see test suits, 2 passed, 2 total, and tests 4 passed, 4 total. Okay, 1 test from the header spec.js and 3 tests from list spec.js. Okay, and if we have some times for those of you who want to attempt some backend testing, it's quite simple. There's no special framework for it. Okay, let's try to implement a backend test. Okay, so for backend testing, we need to have our backend running. Okay, so don't close that npm run start from the backend, keep it running. Okay, so what it gives us is a REST API. We can do some GET requests in the browser. Localhost, I think it's running on port 3000, and I can do localhost 3000 users, user ID, and tasks. So those are basically my 5 tasks of the first user. Okay, and as a very simple test, what I can define is basically a JavaScript file. Okay, that it'll do a GET request on this URI. It'll get the result, and then it'll check at the end that the number of tasks is equal to 5. Basically, that's the very simple test. So in order to perform it, okay, we assume that the backend is running in the backend, in the background, and we need to define. I would suggest to create a folder, for example, test, okay, and in the folder test, you create a test file called tasks.js. In my case, I did some refactoring, and it's I have the tasks, and for some reason users, oops, don't want to spoil. Okay, so I'm gonna fix my naming right now. Okay, sometimes in the IDE, when you have all of this search for references, search in the comments, when you rename things, it can break things. So maybe it's a good idea to check them off. Okay, so I need a tasks.js file within the test folder. Okay, so I'm gonna remove my tasks here. Okay, so a test folder with a tasks.js file. Oops. And basically you'll have to define that tasks.js file. And in order to run our tests, let's add, of course, a script similarly to the front end. Let's call it test. And what the script is going to run is going to run our tasks.js file within the test folder. Okay, so once we have the script, we have the backend running in the background. we have the test folder with the tasks.js file created. Then you can go within the tasks.js and define that simple get request programmatically to perform the get request on this URI localhost port 3000/user/1/tasks. And at the end, you get the result as JSON and you assert whether the length of the array in the JSON is equal to 5. Yep. And basically, if it's not equal to 5, maybe you can do a console log and say, okay, it's not failed, or if it's true, then succeeded, something like that. You might have to import, by the way, a library such as Axios to perform the GET request. And if you're familiar with Axios already, you can go ahead and import it. It's npm install Axios. Or if you want to do it via the fetch, you will still need to import fetch. I think it's called node fetch. Okay, so in order to use fetch, you have to import node fetch, npm install node fetch, and for Axios, npm install Axios. In my case, I used node fetch. So you either can use it the simple way, okay, without async await. So you just do npm install fetch in this case, and then you require fetch in your application, okay, like this const fetch equals require node fetch. Then having fetch, then you can do fetch, you pass in the URI that you want to do the request. By default, it does a HTTP GET request. No complex parameters or something like that need to be passed. So just fetch, and then you have a function called then, which gives you the response, and then you can, within the response function, you can do that if check. Gonna check one thing on my side. Okay, so yep, I hope that you managed to make it work. Otherwise, we're running out of time. So let me just go ahead and show you the solution. Additionally, I'll try to enhance it a bit and make it sort of perform properly. Okay. So when we fail the test, we fail it properly. Like the process itself should fail, not just it shouldn't just say on the terminal that okay, it failed, but the process itself terminated successfully. Okay. So let's go into our test, into the tasks. So I require node fetch, the library to perform the get request. Okay. I'm using the async await method, so it's a bit different from the simple examples, but it's quite simple as well. Okay, basically we await the execution of the HTTP GET request. Okay, we await until this completes the GET request, and then, well, additionally, this async await way of doing fetch requires to do another await on retrieving the JSON from our response. So I'm doing another waiting for retrieving the JSON. Okay, so after I get the JSON from the response, this will be my JSON of the tasks. Okay, this is my array with tasks. I have just to confirm that I have a simple console log for debugging. And then in here I need to have basically if the number of the tasks is different from 5. Basically the 5 is the number of tasks that I expect. So if I get something different than what I expect, then I want to fail this test. Okay. So in order to display like a failed message, okay, so I use this console assert and I pass false. Okay, just to basically fail. Okay, so in case assert evaluates to true, it won't say anything. It'll basically actually let me actually check if it does anything or not. Okay, let me run the test. So I run yarn test. In your case, it's npm run test. Okay, to run the script under package JSON test, which will run the tasks.js in here. In my case, just yarn test. Those are my tasks, and actually I don't get any output. Okay, in my case, if I add assert true, do I get like a success output? Nope. Okay, so if assert gets true, it doesn't say anything. If assert gets false, basically it complains. I could have rewritten this into just assert if I get something different than 5. And I get here the message that my test failed. Okay. So that's the simple test. Okay. We assume that the backend is running in the background, and we define a test function, no special framework or anything, just the library to do the GET request. That library does a GET request on our server that runs in the background, and we check that we get what we expect. Okay, if we get something different than what we expect, then we somehow need to output that we fail. Okay, but it's not enough to just output what the console does. That's why I wanted to use another module which is called assert. Okay, and what assert does is, besides printing to me on the terminal that the assertion failed, it also sort of terminates the process with the failure exit code. Okay, you might not know why you're doing this at the moment, but it'll be quite useful later on. Okay, so in order to do that, we just do assert here. And if I do equal, my IDE automatically checks the documentation of the equal, and it sees that it's deprecated, I believe. Yes, so we are not recommended to use the equal. So instead of that, it's recommended to do deep strict equal, which checks if these are equal and also the types of these things are equal. Okay, what I mean by these things is I need to pass in two things in here. So the task's length and 5. So it'll do like a if statement for me. Okay, it'll do a couple of if statements actually. It'll check if a 5 is equal to the length and also the type of 5, which is a number, is equal to the type of the length, which is also a number, sort of like TypeScript. That's why we have here strict, okay? So let's see. So in our case, because we have 5 tasks, it'll succeed. So we should be able to see this as succeed. Okay, it's done. But if we expect 6 and we get 5, it'll sort of hard fail our test. And not only we'll get like a hard error in here with the full description of what happened, line of code, and the check that it performed, but also it'll sort of fail our process with exit code 1. Okay, so it's a bit more of a complex part in here. So basically there is a set of standard, it's called POSIX, in Unix based systems, and the processes either terminate successfully with exit code 0, or they if the exit code is different from 0, it means that it failed, and the exit codes range from 1 to 255. Okay, so in our case, this assert basically terminates a Unix process, in my case with the exit code 1. And this will be useful later on because usually these unit tests, they are run automatically in a series of tests, which is called a continuous integration, continuous deployment process. Okay, and I'm thinking to do a sort of additional video tutorial on that. So basically the thing is, you push your code to GitHub or GitLab, and automatically the tests are being run directly in GitHub and GitLab in that sort of platform. Okay, they're being run sort of triggered automatically, and a machine that is running the tests is usually a Linux machine. Okay, and in order to succeed the tests, it needs the exit code 0. Okay, and in order to fail a test in that CI, continuous integration, continuous deployment process, it needs the exit code 1, okay, or different than 0, okay? So that's why we need to use this, basically a library that besides printing, it also exits our process with a proper exit code. Okay, so a bit of a technical part at the end, but basically, yeah, backend tests, really simple, okay? Just use assert function required from the assert, okay? And the library that you please, okay, to do those GET requests. Okay, and the tests that you can do for the backend, this is one of the simple tests just to check that the number of items that we get is equal to the expected numbers of items that we expect, okay? We can do a test that we are able to create an item successfully. So we do a post request, and then we immediately do a get request to get the same item and verify that we get the item that we've created successfully. Or we can test that we can delete items. In that test, we'll issue an HTTP delete request to remove the item, and then we'll do an HTTP get request to retrieve the item that we deleted. And if we still get the item, then we fail the test because we expect that item to not exist anymore. Okay, and it's quite similar with the update as well. Okay, so we do an HTTP put request to update an item, and then we do an HTTP get and check the property that we expected to update. And if that property is still the same as before the update, then we fail the test. So those are some of the very simple tests that you can do on the backend side. Okay. Let's see if we have a question. People say that the connection is breaking down. Well, I'm sorry. I cannot do anything. Probably my internet connection is quite weak. I can assure you that I'm not downloading any torrents at the moment, so probably my neighbors are downloading torrents. Could be. Well, that's basically it. I can just copy and paste the backend. Okay, the backend test. For that, you'll need npm install assert, npm install node fetch. You'll need to add the script in the package JSON. This and run with, make sure the backend is running. With npm run start, and finally run the test. Npm run test. Okay, so that's basically backend testing. Hello world. So let's see if we don't have any questions, then that is it. And have a great weekend. And see you on the next one. Yep. Yep. Check the Slack for some messages. I might record some tutorial on that continuous integration, continuous deployment thing, and how to you basically run all of these tests in an automated way using GitHub or GitLab, something like that. Yep. Okay. Yep. Yep. Whenever that'll be done, I'll announce in general. Yep. Okay. Thank you very much. And yep. Have a great weekend, all of you.